This is Deborah. I'm Ann Beheler. We are both involved in National Science Foundation Centers. Her group is the National IT Center that focuses primarily on computation, and our group is the National Convergence Center in Dallas that focuses primarily on networking and a little bit of cybersecurity, though there are cybersecurity centers as well. And then together we are involved in something called NIST. Now, if you can figure out what that really is, go for it. But it's really the National Information Security and Geospatial Technologies Consortium, aka a $20 million DOL tax grant. And stackable certificates permeate everything we do. And so we're going to go through and talk to you about what we're doing, and then we'll give you kind of a teaser of other cool things to come. You want to cover this one? I kind of did it, but
you just did.
All right, fun. All right, go for it.
Okay. So one of the problems that we run into, and some of you have already seen this slide, is that oftentimes we have a very disconnected system that is often focused linearly in a progression that doesn't really necessarily make sense. So because what our students are having as their experience is this, they are having layoffs, they're having companies merge, they're having skills change, and all of a sudden that linear system that was disconnected is no longer appropriate. And so one of the things that we've done is trying to think through how do we take all of these arrows and use them in a way to build different types of opportunities for students. That's where stackable certificates and stackable credentials come in. So BATEC is a National Center, as Ann said, focused on computational technologies into the things like programming, database, analytics, intelligence, all of that. We work in 4 urban technology powerhouses of Boston, Chicago, Las Vegas, and San Francisco. And so we've been working on trying to get connections between not only the high schools, community colleges, and universities in a way and that allows there to be educational pathways, but then we also involve the community in a way that allows those types of services for students, because in urban areas those are very common entities for being part of the educational process. So we focus on, as I said, these computing pathways. We really look at what are the components and the partnerships that are important in making that happen. We look at research, things like labor market intelligence types of tools that help us really understand what's happening in those regions, where the opportunities are. Things like the type of data that you just saw at the keynote. Those are the types of things we really try to think through and build. And then we also have been part of several national discussions, things like Department of Labor competency models, different types of curriculum models, and the Association for Computing Machinery accreditation piece, etc. So that's basically what we do. Challenges. Oh, so one of the reasons why this has come about is, and we have been finding, is that a lot of students and parents and even educators are not necessarily familiar with what's really happening within the IT sector. And so that influences a lot of the enrollments, because if students don't feel that there are jobs out there, they're not going to go into the programs. And so you see a lot of fluctuating enrollments, which doesn't really help schools because they're trying to figure all this out. So one of the main problems comes in that IT is pervasive. And so IT is not just for IT anymore. IT is in healthcare. IT is in environmental sciences. IT is in law enforcement, in forensics, and all of these types of things. And so it becomes much harder for a student to really understand that progression. And so one of the things we've tried to do is hopefully dispel that. And we work with industry constantly as we go through all of this, because if we don't, we're not on the pulse of what's happening in this sector. So.
And the Convergence Technology Center, as I said, is a national IT center primarily focused on what Deborah doesn't focus on. That's not to say that the BATEC colleges don't do networking, that we don't do programming. We do, but they're the lead on the programming computational side, we're the lead on the networking side, and we coordinate, collaborate, etc. We have a total of 8 partners in the current rendition of this grant, which was just renewed in August, just this last year. You'll note that we have a couple of universities and several community colleges across the United States. And in addition to this, I will give a plug right now. We have what's called the Convergence College Network that is available to you. And if you want to learn about that, here's a little bit of a tease. At 1:30 today, we're talking about our National Business and Industry team, and we're also going to tell you how you can get involved in that, but we won't do that here. So anyway, our goals, these are the same goals we've had since 2003-04 time frame. It's just changed over time because obviously what we're teaching now is not anything near what we were teaching in 2003 and 4. In fact, I suspect there are very few classes that are even titled the same. We are creating the convergence degrees and certificates that are driven by business need, and I will tell you very, very strongly, we have our business team lead, not advise. I absolutely get kind of chills when I think about just having businesses advise. Advise means you can listen and you can ignore them. Lead means you have to listen. And it makes a big difference in the outcomes, not only in what you put into the curriculum, but also in terms of what the outcomes are for the students at the end. We also provide professional development for faculty. How many of you are teaching the same thing that you were teaching in 2003? And not too many. So we provide lots and lots of deep dive professional development for faculty to make sure that they have the skills to teach the brand new things. We also work pretty heavily in recruiting and retaining underserved students. And we all know that this is an uphill battle, but it's a big thing that's very, very important to all of us. And in some respects, the Stackable credentials play into this because it gives students who may or may not be able to commit to an extensive, contiguous time of being in college the ability to have some credentials that they can leave with. We also, as all National Science Foundation grants, share everything. We disseminate everything. It's your taxpayer money. If we have something, you have a right to have it, so you need to just know to ask us for it. We're also involved in the National Information Security Geospatial Technologies Consortium, which is a DOL PACT grant. That is based on the work of 4 National Science Foundation centers. You're going to see over here there are 4 of them: Convergence Technology Center, BATEC, Geotech, and CASIA, and the colleges that they represent. We're also involved with Salt Lake City Community College, Bellevue College, and Rio Salado College in that arena. And one of the key things that we proposed in that proposal was stackable credentials. It is aimed at the Trade Adjustment Act workers whose jobs have been offshore through no fault of their own. It is evidence-based. We do the things that we proposed. We actually had research to back it up. There were 4 priorities. One was accelerating progress for low-skilled workers, improving retention and achievement rates, and that's where the stackables really play in. Because as we all know that we have a lot of emphasis on completion within our states at this point. And also we have students that, as I said, drop in and drop out of what we are doing in the community college. So it's better for them to leave if they leave with a credential of some sort at that point, because I don't know about you, but I've had several jobs in my lifetime, and I suspect most of our students will and have as well. And again, I'll emphasize that we meet industry needs in our programs. We're very, very clear about how we work with industry and let them lead. And then almost everything we do is online. And in addition, one of our key things is the virtual laboratory component that, I don't know if Julie's in this room, but Julie talked about it yesterday, and Rich Weeks from NDG is in the back of the room. We have a lot of virtual laboratories that are being created in open source, and it's part of the Stackable. Here's our group. I won't read all of that to you. We have affiliate colleges also working with the 7 major colleges, and we'll just kind of move on. The specialties are 4, where Deb's group focuses primarily, primarily on the programming database, etc., and we focus primarily on network infrastructure. We also have CASIA out of Moraine Valley focusing on cybersecurity. And then the geospatial technologies are handled by Delmar in Corpus Christi. Suddenly couldn't remember. Here's the concept. You want to cover?
So basically the idea is to be able to think through steps along the way and have each step at the next level add value for the student. And so the idea is that depending on the skill levels, they may start in adult basic education, they may start in bridge programs that allow them to be able to get into the college setting, maybe overcome some of the things around developmental math and English, being able to get some introductory technology skills. We actually do a lot of that bridge work in community-based organizations because that's where these residents feel much more comfortable. And so we also do some of it at the high school level as well. Then that goes into foundational types of things, getting into some different concentrations, etc. It does not mean that they have to do that many concentrations. It's just showing that they can, depending on how they stack into it. As it shows, there are work-based components and internships along the way to be able to have them gain, again, the valuable skill sets from that experience.
Yeah, and one comment here. This looks all nice linear, just like what we said wasn't true. Well, it's really not linear, but the concept is you start with a base credential of some sort, and then you can add on specialties of various kinds, and it's not necessarily going to be linear.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about an experience in Boston and how we came to do this, and we didn't exactly know what they were called at the time. So anyway, so we had a student that was taking a course that was decision-making using Excel, okay? So it taught things like macros, and it taught things like queries, and it taught things like pivot tables and all sorts of other things within it. There was a component that we were doing to help students understand some of the employability factors. And so we had them start posting a resume on monster.com. And as they got some of the different skill sets, they would add that to their resume. All of a sudden, one of the top students disappeared from the class. And the professor's sitting there going, okay, what just happened? You know, they didn't show up, oh my gosh, is exactly what's going on? And comes back in the next week and says, you know, I'm so sorry to miss the class. Is there some way I can do this online? I just got this phenomenal job. I had 5 calls after I put up that I knew pivot tables. So we said, oh my gosh, you know, maybe there's something to this that we need to start really thinking about having these students identify some of the skill sets along the way. Same thing happened with Cisco. We were having them do some networking things, and again, all of a sudden these students started getting calls from employers, and it was like, okay. And again, in computer forensics, we were starting to see these, and we said, okay, we need to start thinking through how we chunk some of this. So students can have the ability to be able to show that they have gained some kinds of skills and credentials to be able to allow them to gain some of these employment entries. And as I said, we didn't know what they were called. We just said, oh yeah, these are really great. And so when the tax grant came out and they said Stackable, we said, ah, that's what we're doing. So anyway, go to the next one.
Well, and a comment here, this really addresses what we've known all along, and that is that our states call completers actual certificates, actual degrees, all that sort of thing. And our students, in fact, have been dropping in and out of our process for years, getting what they need, getting better jobs, but we've not gotten any credit for it. So this is a vehicle to satisfy their needs and ours at the same time.
So the way that we have ours set up in the Boston area is, as I said, we have bridge programs with community-based organizations as well as in the high school where they can start some of the entry-level work. And then there is a fast-track certificate, then going into an advanced career certificate, going into an associate's degree, and going into a bachelor's degree. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll show you an example from the networking one. Okay, so here's networking. So they start out with a lot of the PC essentials and going in, the IT essentials and the Cisco types of things. they add Linux and wireless and operating systems and server admin types of courses to go into the advanced certificate. They get the Gen Eds, which gives them the associate's degree, and then move into a Bachelor of Science in IT and Systems Administration at the university level. And so these students, here's some of the details. So here's the 15 credits that they would take in the fast track certificate. The 4 here, the Cisco, and then there's the PC hardware, the IT problem solving. Next one. This makes it 29 credits from the 15, going up. Then they go into the associates, and so they also take some additional types of courses there, including the programming, oral communications, etc. And then this is the systems administration at the BSIT. So these students keep adding courses along there, and then are able to sit there and have these credentials as they go through this. And one of the things that we find is that students are starting to retain better, because as they start getting some of these things, there's incentive for them to go to the next step. And it doesn't seem like, oh my gosh, I've got to get 60 credits to get the associate's degree. They can get the first 15, then they can get the 29, and then they can go up to the 60. And we're finding, and in fact, in the when we started looking at these organizations, it was really fascinating, because a lot of these people do not have models of college goers. They don't have a relative that has any college experience. They don't know what that means or what that is like. And so when we first started doing some of these community-based courses, you would sit there and have these people come in at the graduation, and we had to give them little incentives along the way. It's like, okay, we're going to give you a book here, we're going to give you a flash drive here, and we're going to give you this here, just to kind of keep them moving through the course, because life got in their way. And it was one of those where you come in, you do well on the test, you get a flash drive, or you do well on this, we give you a voucher to Staples for, to go get some supplies or whatever, just to keep them going. And at the end of the course, you would think that they had just conquered the world. They would get up and say, oh my gosh, I finished this course. And the thing that was even more impressive about it was that, and now I'm going to tell my kids that college is possible. And so it was not only changing the equation for them, it was changing the equation for their families. So that's why some of this is so important. These are some examples of some of the stackable credentials that we're building in the Boston area, trying to really look at what those look like and try to put them through. So anyway, these are, as I said, along the different partnerships, and you were going to talk a little bit about cross. Sure. In NISGTC.
Yeah.
Which I can't get that acronym right.
Well, when you write a proposal for DOL, folks, think these kinds of things through really, really well, because suddenly we were awarded this grant in October of 2011. And the way DOL works is they evaluate your proposal and they award the grant, and your name is there, and it's, for all perpetuity, that's what you're going to call it. So we might have called it something a little simpler had we really realized that that's what we were doing. But anyway, my point is there are 7 partners in this grant. And what we originally thought we were going to do is have model curriculum that everybody would adopt. Now we have had some lessons learned. Let's just say that if you are dealing with 6 different states and the rules in 6 different states, the concept of having one single set of curriculum that everybody's going to adopt, King's X, it would probably take it, 10 years to get that sort of thing through all of the state rules and processes. So we have backed off of that. Instead, we have very strong leadership from a national business and industry leadership team that has identified the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they want graduates to have 12 to 36 months out. And we have worked with the various colleges to integrate that into their curriculum, their certificate plans. In some cases, they've modified the certificates that they already had. They have added new certificates, etc. My whole point to you is, when I was asked to provide the list of programs of study for all 7 colleges to the Department of Labor, it totals something like 100 different certificates and degrees. So my point is, contact us. We will provide you all of the variations on a theme here, but the thing that you need to know is it still goes back to the business demand. What did business want us to teach? So that when the student pops out the other end with a credential, they're readily willing and able and interested in hiring them. So here's the areas we're in. We're in mobile app development, programming, business, database, business intelligence, software testing and programming, cybersecurity, all variations of that, including the forensics and the information assurance. In the networking, we're in voice over IP, obviously the base Cisco, virtualization, all of those sorts of things, and then also geospatial technologies. So there's lots of things here, and I suspect everybody in this room is interested in one or more of these. And if you're not, this whole process actually applies to whatever else you're doing that's in a technological area. Yes?
So I just want to confirm what I'm hearing. Over a region, seven educational partners that have over 100 programs of study that roll up into these 6 areas.
Yes.
That in these 6 areas, within there's stackable certificates.
But it's not a region, it's a nation. We are
okay.
Massachusetts, Washington, Arizona, Illinois, Texas, and Utah. We pretty well cover coast to coast. Yeah.
And the idea is that all of this is shareable. So
yeah, everything's
just because
shareable.
someone created one in something else, if they have a voice one that we want in Boston, we can go take it from this kind of repository. Yes.
Are these courses taught online? Any of them are taught online?
Almost all of them will be online. Part of our focus in the DOL grant is to put almost everything we're doing online. Rio Salado is, as you know, the College Without Walls. They have something like 50,000 online students a year. They're the vehicle for putting things online. We had originally, and here's another lesson learned, we had originally thought we could share all of our existing curriculum. Well, we can, except the Department of Labor requires anything that we share to be open source. Well, we learned that even though the faculty at these various colleges had very vibrant programs that had created a lot that was their own, a lot of it was based on publisher materials. And so that's not open source. And the most we can share in some courses is actually the syllabus, and that's about it. Now, we are, though, creating brand new courses to the tune of about, well, originally said it was going to be 16, but I think it's more like 28 or 30 at this point. And those new courses and new certificates are totally open source, totally shareable. Should be finished, begin to be, well, some of them are finished now. We have Security Plus that has been finished now. Security Awareness is finished. We have several courses that are coming out of the pipeline, but almost all of them will be finished in the summer, in the spring and summer timeframe.
Yes.
Are you actually teaching online courses across state lines? Have you started doing that? Because we looked into that, and like I'm from Glendale, Southern California, and we had a student in Ohio that wanted to take a class with us. In order for that to happen, we had to pay the state of Ohio $1,500 for a 3-unit class, and so we decided that wasn't a really good economic model for us. I'm just wondering if I mean, conceptually, the internet doesn't care about state lines, but state governments do. And I'm just wondering if you've done your homework on exactly what the ramifications are of teaching out-of-state students online.
That actually depends on the college. There are things that we have learned that a consortium does, and there are things that we have learned that a consortium virtually cannot do. And that is one of the areas that we leave that to the individual colleges. I do know that we, for example, I think I'm getting my colleges mixed up because I've actually been at several of them. But okay, let me go back to one that I do know. When I was at Orange Coast College, we did online training, and we had students in Taiwan, and it worked fine. There are, in fact, all sorts of intricacies, shall we say, for teaching people in different states, but we're leaving that to the individual colleges.
And what we have up there is curriculum.
That's
it is
right.
not a course. So it is
Correct.
not something that you go in and you take a course in security offered by such and such a school. It is a curriculum package that you can take as an institution and implement it.
That was just a gotcha that I ran into.
Yeah. Well, we don't have any magic bullets for the gotchas. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, we have not tried to deal with those policies.
We're not. Now, interestingly enough, these new courses that we're creating actually will have at minimum, or do already have at minimum, a PowerPoint deck to go by, and a syllabus with a schedule, also a weekly learning activities, weekly quizzes, midterms, finals, the whole 9 yards on that. And in addition, almost all of them will have virtual laboratory capability. And those virtual labs, Rich, close your ears. If you, well, ideally, I would want to use the NDG platform and have these virtual labs available anytime, any place with internet access. But I also recognize that colleges sometimes can't afford to do that. Each of the labs comes with a lab document that's anywhere from 20 to 35 pages long, and that has to be open source. So with that being open source, you could have it, you could create what's in the virtual lab in your actual laboratory physically, and you could do it there if you could not, under any circumstances, do the virtual lab. However, we are really excited about virtual labs. We think that it's definitely worth the investment, and we're going to help you get there. Right, Rich? Okay.
And the discussions with a lot of people about trying to figure out how I can marry to .org.
Yes.
So that we can help those schools that can't get budget or grant money to do it.
Right.
But, guys, we have to figure out how to sustain.
Yeah, we do. Within the Department of Labor grant, we have 7 colleges, and each of those 7 colleges is putting in a virtual laboratory setup that is a Cadillac. It honestly is. It's about $250,000 each that we're doing. I think you were first, and then you.
So I really like the depth and breadth as an operating system instructor and somebody who has to turn people out into the real world and then hear from them and see them at the grocery store.
Well, that's good. You get to follow up on your graduate.
It always be awkward. But I like to follow the progress of it. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of them will want to have some sort of a certificate of achievement or certification as they exit. How are you handling that, and what are your recommendations?
So
go ahead, and then I'll talk.
Yeah, I was going to say to begin with. So the entry-level fast-track certificates are certification-based for the most part, in order for them to be able to get those credentials that allow them to move forward. As you see, as you go down the road on that progression, you'll see less and less of those types of certifications because there are not necessarily certifications in those upper-level courses. So, but we start them out with those credentials at the very beginning to give them those types of pieces of paper that are going to be important for their employability.
The ones that get them the interviews. And
right.
Exactly. Right. And so that's how we do it. So we really jumpstart that at the very beginning and have them, and that is something now. So let me give a caveat. It is not a certification class in the school. It is an intro to whatever, networking or whatever it is. What we do as what Bunker Hill does is they have a kind of a boot camp for the certification test.
Right.
That is offered as a very small type of segment piece off of it so that the students can go take the certification test. Because we cannot in this program really sit there and say, oh, well, this is a certification course, because then they're going to be expecting to do the certification exam as part of it and everything, and that's not something that we can fund to do that.
A comment to you before we move on. I would suggest that the value or lack thereof for certifications, the high-stakes certification, varies by part of the country that you're in. It really does. I used to be director of certifications at Novell in a previous life. And I would have told you, CNE, NCNE, all that good stuff. I mean, everybody, go for it, go for it. When I got back to Texas, initially, the business team that we were working with was not so fussed about certifications. They weren't necessarily wanting them, but that's turned around again. They're very interested in them again. So I think you have to stay plugged in with whatever your regional business is and decide what you want to do.
This is a side note we should talk, because I just talked to Mary Jo the other day.
Yay!
I'm the guy who did all the COP and CLA stuff.
Oh, yay! Yay, yay, good.
But I think that one of the things that's important, to Ann's point, is that sometimes it's just the very entry. It's the thing that says, okay, they've at least got a baseline.
Right.
It's not what normally gets them a job, at least in Montclair area. Yes.
Right. I think you were next.
Yeah, I just have a question about the sustainability of the virtual lab. Is it possible to have we considered maybe passing on the cost to the student as a materials fee or lab fee to maybe help? I don't know if that would, put a dent, but
We have not developed our sustainability plan yet. I'm sure we will be looking at that. I looked at that before, though. When we were doing the Novell authorized training and the Microsoft authorized training, I looked at having the cost of the books actually be part of the technology fee that was associated with the course. It didn't work out in Texas. I think, again, that depends on where you are. Yes?
That can help respond. What you have to be very careful about if you generate any revenue from some of the software products that you offer in virtual labs is that you don't violate the vendor licensing.
Yeah, right.
You have to make sure you turn it into a revenue-producing item, that it does not corrupt your academic license that you received from the vendor.
That's right. That's
So
right.
you've got to really read the licensing, and what you might find is your administrative costs, and all the legal costs, and all the other headaches
Are worth
are
it.
more than going to offset what you would generate in revenue and income. So everybody would like to figure out how to pass the cost on to the student. A lot of the landmines that you start running into just add up to the cost. And I hope that helps the people to think
Sure.
through that it's not as simple as just charging the student to make it work.
And the maintenance per year, once you get the virtual labs in, is not that much. Now, there is human power, personnel, to keep everything working and all set up to work properly in the virtual lab environment.
What I was going to share is a lot of schools that I work with, what they do is very creative model. They don't charge the student for specific things, but they do charge like a lab recovery fee through their school tuition.
Sure.
Or they charge another school for collaboration fee. But they're very careful of how they charge the
that's what we call materials fee.
Yeah, you have to be very, very careful.
Just
There, there were, hold on a second, there were two people first. Okay.
Just a couple of points. I think if we extrapolate out to the future, what I think would be helpful for some of us, if all the lab resources could be on the cloud, so we don't have to have our own server. We could pay a fee to access all the lab resources on the cloud. So I hope that some of this.
Rich, want to comment?
If you do that would be the best business model on earth for me and many others. But as I just said earlier about the vendors, you have to go each vendor. So if you think about each program when you start mapping the search, you got to go look at that vendor and what their software license allow you to do and to host.
But for us, it would be more efficient if we had pay a fee and had already been taken care of on the cloud.
Agreed. We'd love to do that for you. That's what I'm saying. I would love to do that for you. I think that'd be the best business model on earth, but it's not as easy as just doing it.
And the other point to piggyback on what you said about a student getting a job and dropping out of class in California, we have this tunnel vision view from Sacramento that the only thing that counts is degree completion. That in reality, we have students taking one class and getting a job, or it's retraining, or they even drop out of the class and get a job. And for the economy, that's a success, but it's not counted as a success of the
So what I didn't say about that student is the student did finish the course. It was just done through another professor online so that the student could complete it. Because what happened with the job was now being placed during the time that that class was
Well,
finished.
I had students drop out of the class because they got jobs. So
Sure.
It's a success.
Right.
Society is a success, but it's not counted as a success.
Well, and that's the whole concept of the stackables and the smaller bite-sized chunks. You can't get beyond if they take one class and have a success and drop out in the middle of the class. I don't know how you do that. And California is not alone, by the way. The whole nation's in the same situation. Pay for performance, apportionment not just based on FTEs, but based on graduation rates. Richard, and then we'll come back to you. Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment to Melissa and stuff about the materials fee. A materials fee has to be something that they can take with them and when they leave. So there's no way on something that's virtual like that that we could.
Yeah, that's California. It's a little different in some other states, but I will say in Texas we backed off of it. Yes.
I just want to say I'm from NetApp. We're just launching a new entry-level certification this week, as a matter of fact. And I'll tell you, your coach is spot on. What we're saying is we go to market and have a solution for cloud and data center consolidations that's jointly with Cisco and then typically a virtualization partner like VMware, Microsoft, or Citrix. Mm-hmm. And so what we're hearing from our customers is it's very hard for them to find talent that has a certification across all three, the virtualization, the networking, and the storage. And from a Stackable perspective, at that entry-level section that you said, if you had students that were completing a Cisco certification, a VMware certification, and had a NetApp or a storage certification on top of it, they would be very attractive. They're bringing in that breadth of I guess, experience and knowledge. And it's probably, what we're hearing is it's not going to guarantee them a job, but it will certainly get them foot in the door and make them attractive. So that combination of stackable certificates, I think, is a very, it's very interesting approach. I love it.
We have several of the group of 7 that have variations on the theme that provide exactly that. Yeah.
And I have a meeting, so I apologize, but I wanted to ask you, are you going to be presenting at the TCCA, or what is the
Texas one?
In Houston next month? No.
No. But you can get a card from me or something like that.
I'll look you up. Just to address a couple of things real quick. You're absolutely right. The Robert Half International did a survey of over 10,000 employers, and they have their finger on the pulse of staffing, right? And hands down, every single one of them said they look for certifications on resumes. So it might not guarantee you a job, but it'll get you an interview. It'll get you a look, okay? And in your neck of the woods, Harvard did the research on Pathways of Prosperity a couple of years ago. As everyone may have read that, big, great study. And Harvard said you don't necessarily need a college degree to get a good job these days. Go out and get a bunch of certification. That's a little tiny piece of it.
Right, she's part of Pathways to Prosperity.
Yeah, I would say that DOL disagrees with Harvard. Just by the way, they're making a really big push to have academic credentials align with those certifications so that the students actually do have academic credentials for later. So, lively discussion. Anything else you want to know?
Yeah, I think I'm from that also. I'm from recently a district pulled out of line and hiring manager for a long time. And the certs do get you, a foot in the door. They do get your resume taken seriously. But if you drop out of a program and then the job doesn't work out, later on down the line, where an associate's degree shows somebody like me is that you stuck with something, you finished it, and you have a breadth of education.
That's right.
That you're not just an ECPI 0 to 6 months and like that you've taken with us. You can think critically, you can communicate. You've had a probably co-op involved. And it really points to really the critical thinker that we're looking for.
Sure. Well, and another thing too is when I used to teach these certification certification classes and also help prep people for the test, I would always tell the students, don't ever confuse passing the certification test with necessarily meaning you know how to do the job. Make sure you've done the hands-on labs so that you really know what to do. You know, book learning versus applied learning is a whole different thing. The other thing is, which some of the faculty that I worked with at the time hated, but it's very, very important, is to make sure that every class has at least some kind of project where the student has to participate with a team to create a solution to some kind of a real-world problem, even if it's a small one or a big one, or get up to a capstone. Because those sorts of write-ups for solutions, those become part of the student's portfolio that they can then go show a potential employer. Not only do I have the certification and the academic credential, here's evidence I know how to do the job.
And I think the other piece is that do not underestimate the power of internships for students or work-based experiences for them, because that allows them to be able to kind of get that experience in a very different way and have to be able to look at requirements for the business, et cetera. And so it's very important to really think through how that can happen. I know one of the big projects that we've been trying to get our hands around and figure out how to scale it is really with small businesses in the region with community college students, because again, it's one of those things where these people need talent, and it's if we can match a lot of the capabilities with the students, and it means getting them workplace ready. It's not just the technical skills, as you've heard many, many times before. It's really those types of employability skills that makes that complete package that allows that student to be much more competitive.
We're also piloting virtual internship externships. This spring, you can ask me in about 6 months how it went. The concept is to have the business people involved from the get-go in a capstone course with teams of students creating solutions for the problem, whatever the problem is. But rather than having the business person teach the class, the business person would be the advisor on the side participating through webinar. Which, oh, by the way, when I worked for Novell almost 10 years ago, half my staff was not co-located where I was. I worked with them over the internet. Why can't we do this with our students? That's the real world of work they're going into. Yeah, Bill was first, sorry.
One real quick one about as far as matching up the certifications, certificates with academics. I know about other states, but California is in a huge fight right now between the academic leg of the campuses and the CTE side of the campuses. And the more that we on the CTE side tend to pull ourselves away from any kind of academic credentialing, if you want to think of it that way, the harder it's going to be in a reduced society, in a reduced funding environment, to be able to justify the fact that we need funding, because they're saying, well, we need more English classes, we need more math classes, we need more social science classes.
Well, and CTE obviously costs more money. So it helps to get grants to help fund it. It helps to get businesses to donate equipment like we have in California, like we have.
And I think it's just one point quickly. I don't think it's that difficult to marry the two.
No, I'm saying.
And, right, but it has to be conscious. And it really has to be something that is proactively done so that you're not disengaging those two. Yes.
Yeah, it also helps to be clear about our, what we're doing and be able to describe that to the administration. So my question was about the certifications that you've identified that are baseline, fundamental ones. I'm very familiar with the networking, Boisvert IP. But what about the other 5 areas? Have you identified industry?
So, for example, databases, Oracle.
Or SQL.
Or SQL, right.
Yeah.
Do you have those published somewhere that we could?
Oh, are you kidding? We're not up to date on our publishing. We're trying really hard to just keep it going. But yes, we will.
We can't do all these programs in our school, but maybe we could do some of the fundamentals.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And we've got lists of different ones that we're trying to aggregate right now and be able to post so that people do have that opportunity to be able to look at least what some of these look like.
I have a lot of data I am happy to share. It's at this point not necessarily pretty enough to put it out there for public consumption, but I am very, very willing to share all of the stuff that I have.
And I think in the spring we're launching, I think it's 8 fast tracks in Boisvert Community College.
Right.
So it's basically a whole menu of different ones that again.
Any other questions?
Going to the fast track?
I'm sorry?
More depth going to the fast track that you just mentioned as Montreal?
Well, so the fast track is basically kind of a certification, almost focused type of early credential that's about 15, 16 credits. Because they have to get, I think 16 credits they have to have in order to get financial aid. So I think they're built on 16 credits.
Well, and 2, I know that Bunker Hill has worked in CBOs, community-based organizations, as of this spring and into the summer, this last spring and into the summer. And I know in some of the offerings, they've offered Cisco, and the Cisco's been offered on a very compressed format so that they can get through the same courses but get through them faster that hopefully will put them to work faster.
So in other words, instead of taking 2 courses that take an entire semester, they're taking 2 courses that are chunked so that they get through them in 6 weeks each versus 13 or whatever.
Right. Questions, comments? I have some cards up here. I would love to interact with you, and I really do have lots of material I can share. We just don't have it on the website yet.
Yeah, that's a question real quick. Can people contribute? I mean, they've got lab content.
Of course. Of course. Of course. You can contribute anything you wish to contribute as long as it is open source and you can substantiate that it is original material. We're being very, very careful with that because to not be careful with that would be a very bad headline on plagiarism for community colleges. That would not be cool. But yes, they certainly can contribute. And I can get you the list of new courses we're creating. And in some cases, the courses aren't brand new, but they're courses, in fact, that are high enrollment, like A+ and Net+, that I know that sometimes the cost of the books is 3 times the cost of the tuition. So we're setting it up so that ostensibly we could teach the whole thing without having to have purchase textbooks.
The reason I ask that question is what I see consistently is reinventing of the wheel. In
Yep.
any subject content area, the university or community college, you're simultaneously working on the same content. The school decides they no longer need that content, it just goes basically in the garbage can. So programs like Mark's running at NetApp, Chuck's running at LTI, they create normalization and standardization, but they've got marketplace and motivation to create that quality and delivery in the lab. And what you see in schools is they get centered to their communities. They invest in their community and map to a cert, and then all the other schools in the U.S. that can benefit get no value from that specific stovepipe mentality. This program is awesome because it's going to create a distributable model where these consortium will benefit and then others can also benefit. I hope that makes sense.
I'll also make another comment, and I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. The work with the National Business and Industry Leadership Team is crucial to what we are doing. Our work with the National Business and Industry Leadership Team is actually being highlighted as a success in the tax grants to Congress. I learned that this morning because they called and asked a bunch of questions about how we were doing it and what impact it had on our curriculum. That is a very, very important part because, yes, we create curriculum, but we're creating curriculum that is aligned with the knowledge, skills, and abilities these guys want to see. And guys is a unisex term, ladies. I've been one of the guys many years. Anyway, bottom line of it is, if we align our curriculum with what they want, when the students come out the other end with credentials, they're readily employable. And that's the name of the game.